Hey guys, Argent here. So this is a video response to Aldwat, if that's how you pronounce his name. If that's not how you pronounce it, I'm sorry, I'm sometimes bad with pronunciations. Especially if it's a foreign language like English. I speak Canadian. Anyways, so he asked an interesting question. He asked whether reactionaries should readopt Christianity or not, as kind of as the basis. Because historically, the reactionary movement was what was called throne and altar, or scepter and altar, where kings and various other kind of right-wing governments and the church would work together to contain the spread of liberalism, socialism, etc. But we're living in a post-Christian West, and that post-Christianity, I find, has gone over to many of my fellows in the alt-right. Maybe they never grew up in a Christian household. Maybe they've never looked into it really. Maybe just the sad, pathetic, feminized state of modern Christianity has completely turned them off. And to that I do kind of understand. But I obviously think that it can and should be the center of any neo-reactionary movement. Now, why is this? It's because I think Christianity is quintessentially Western. I think it kind of encompasses everything that is quintessentially Western, and encompasses it in a healthy, productive way. I think it's very easy to just dismiss leftism and to just say leftism, there's nothing true about it. It's this foreign thing that Shlomo or someone else has imposed upon us. There's no basis for it. It's completely antithetical to the natural order. Well, I beg to differ, because I don't think it would have worked as well if it didn't touch at something that was already there. I did a video, and I'll post a link to it if I remember, called The Infinity Will, the Soul of the West, where I tried to define what Western man is, what Western culture is, what are the values in essence of us as a people. So I talked about a long-term view of time, a dynamic view of time, a view that the future can change, that the future is malleable, a sense of optimism towards the future. I don't necessarily mean like social progressivism, but there's a sense of, oh, okay, if we go out and we plant an extra field next year, or we're going to develop technology to cure that illness, or we're going to solve these global warming, kind of like good old-fashioned, they call it like American can-do spirit. Like you just go out and do stuff. And you have a hope that if you work hard and you're smart and you try, stuff is going to somehow work out for you. There's an almost naive and deliberately naive belief in good and evil, that they do matter. There's a commitment to moral purity and to becoming more pure, both as an individual and a society. In essence, what the West quintessentially is driven by what Spengler called the Faustian will to the infinite. Not necessarily just the will to power, but the will to infinite in all of its variety of forms. The need to stretch out to infinite space. The need to always have more, to pursue more, to become better, to evolve, to grow, to change. And leftism is a corruption of that. Leftism is a materialistic corruption of what the West really is. And the fact that it works so well is testament to how it is, in essence, it is a corruption of who we are. It's not something foreign. It's how viruses work is they go into the cell and they become part of the cell and they adapt to become more like the cell, and at the same time they adapt, they change the genetics of the cell so it like self-destructs and dies, and so that the cell works to replicate the virus. That's kind of how cultural Marxism works. It adopts whatever the values are of the host society and twists them. It's kind of like an autoimmune disorder. So how does any of this relate to Christianity? Well, I would contend that Christianity is the ultimate or the essential form of what it means to be Western. And let's just go into this a bit. So, this issue, a lot of people reject that Christianity is quintessentially Western. So they'll say, well, Jesus was Jewish, it comes from Israel, it's cuckish that we follow someone else's religion. Well, to that I say, first off, in my view at least, Christ is God, and to me it doesn't really matter where he was born. God is God. He existed before the earth and the universe, before any concept of race or ethnicity existed. Two, the Jews of back then are not the Jews of today. Three, it's not particularly unusual for people to adopt a faith from another country. The Indians adopted the Indo-Aryan religion that was brought there by the Aryan peoples. Much of the world has adopted Islam, which is a foreign religion. The Romans adopted a lot of aspects of Greek culture, Greek gods, etc. It's not really that uncommon or that unusual. Also, I would argue that you can't burn truth on the altar of political expediency. I guess just to that the general idea that we have to be anti-Shlomo, so we can't have Christianity because it's Jewish, is basically just kind of saying that the spiritual has to be subjugated to the political. That all religious belief and all spirituality has to be subject to political concerns, which I just don't think so. So there's that. Then they will say that, well, I'm in touch with the religion of my ancestors because I worship Thor. Well, it depends who your ancestors are. I mean, a lot of these people I don't think are actually German. I mean, a lot of them are, but are they actually German? Are they just some LARPers from, like, I don't know, Italy or somewhere in Europe where they didn't worship Thor, who are just adopting Thor because Thor's cool and it's kind of the largest neo-pagan movement? I don't know, but they say, okay, well, my forefathers didn't worship, weren't Christian. Well, but they were. I mean, the people who are the closest to you were Christian. My family has been Christian on my father's side since at least like the 900s. For well over 1,000 years, they've been Christian. My family on my father's side were Vikings who settled in Normandy and converted to Catholicism. And eventually, my family came across to England with William the Conqueror. So my family has been like Catholic for 600 years and then Anglican for like 400 years. So within living memory and long before living memory, my entire past has been Christian. The West has been Christian more or less since Constantine, since the 3rd century. Theodosius, I forget if it was 50 or 100 years after Constantine, made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. This is something that's been around for if we like 1700 to 1800 years. It's not like it's some new thing that just showed up. I mean, people would have you believe, if you listen to some of them, that some Jewish guy was just like, oh, Christianity like 200 years ago, and it showed up, and everybody before then was like hardcore Odinists. No. The people who built the modern West, the people who were there from late antiquity to the transition to the medieval era, to the transition to modern nation states, were pretty much all Christian, at least culturally Christian, if not religiously Christian. Germany, that people seem to love, all incarnations of Germany have been explicitly Christian. The Holy Roman Empire was the first incarnation of Germany. It was founded to be a Catholic empire, a Christian empire created by the Pope. Germany, the Second Reich, was also Christian. It was Lutheran Reformed instead of Catholic, but it was still Christian. If we look at all the modern countries in Europe, pretty much all of them were Christian at the time that their nation state was formed. Christianity was the glue that held, that created a pan-European identity and made all the peoples of Europe put aside their differences to fight off the Muslims when they were coming to invade. The Crusades were able to stop the Muslims, or at least slow them down, and eventually push them out of Spain and Italy. It's not like it's a foreign thing anymore. Even if it was initially a foreign thing, we're also assuming that there was some united like European identity prior to it, which I find is kind of one of the issues in general with this and this line of thinking, is that people had some conception of a white race or of Europa prior to, like, I don't know, 500 or 600 years ago. I don't know if they really did, particularly in antiquity, when people would be worshipping Thor and Odin. So I don't know, to them Christianity would probably seem as foreign as the gods in the next county over. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. I want to get a bit more into the depth of why Christianity is quintessentially Western. So let's talk a bit about Christian doctrine. So the basis of Christianity is that you are inherently flawed. That because of the fall, we are all flawed. That through the fall, man gave up an illusory perfection in pursuit of free will. Or it depends on the denomination. In Orthodoxy, the idea, in Catholicism, the idea is man already had free will, and that the original sin was disobeying God and believing Satan's lie that the fruit would grant him knowledge of good and evil and make him greater. And that we can kind of see the first spark of the infinity will and its Faustian nature, the need for more and how it backfires. So essentially, after that happened, God said, okay, you've given up perfection, so you're going to have to take the long route to become perfect again. But in taking the long route, and becoming adults in your faith, and becoming infinite in your faith, you become much greater than you were when you had this childlike sense of perfection. When you become an adult, once you've been through the transformational process, then you will truly become a god with a lowercase g. And the ultimate purpose of Christianity is something called theosis, or deification in Catholicism. And the idea is you start out, and this is true for humanity as well as the individual. You start out in this fallen, sin-filled state. You start out weak. You start out pathetic even. And through the sacraments, through the regular obtainment of divine grace, through repentance, through trying to become a better person, you become stronger. Every time you go to confession, every time you pray, every time you look upwards towards the stars, you obtain divine grace. And that makes you stronger. And that pulls you away from being an animal, from being a demon, from being something basic. And that pulls you towards becoming a god, with a lowercase g, not an uppercase g. Because that's what saints are. Saints are beings who have obtained that have basically obtained divinity, not in the same way God is, but they have become immortal, they have become powerful, they have transcended and become infinitely greater, and they lie within the presence of God, becoming stronger and more purified and more perfect on an infinite quest towards the unattainable perfection. And to me, that is quintessentially Western. What could be more Western than a religion that's based on the idea that the world is imperfect, but that you have to infinitely stretch towards purity, towards making the world a better place, towards bettering yourself spiritually, bettering your society, and just bettering it. And Christianity is inherently an optimistic religion. It believes eventually that justice will be served to all of us. It has an almost naive belief that in the last day, God will judge us all, and he will be so fair in his judgment that no one will feel hard done by. It believes that there is good and there is evil, and that it is worth dying for the pursuit of good and against evil. That is something that is good, that martyrdom is good in pursuit of a higher principle, in pursuit of a higher cause. And what could be more quintessentially Western than that? Sure, it's romantic, and people can dismiss it as emotionalism, but romanticism and emotionalism are quintessentially Western. That's why the left does such a good job appealing to it, because it's a part of your soul. It's a part of who you are as a Western man. And so Christianity embodies within its most basic doctrine the Western desire to become greater, to improve yourself personally, morally, and spiritually, to reach up towards the heavens. God in Christianity is infinite. He created all things. He created the heavens and the earth. He is not some tribal idol. He is infinite. He is beyond our conception. He represents that which we internally strive for. Plato, it's no shock that Plato came up with a form of monotheism, worship of the infinite. He didn't particularly believe in a personal God, but he thought there was this infinite divine one, this monad, this supreme thing. And that's why Platonism was adopted so well into Christianity. And indeed, much of Catholic doctrine and Catholic theology and Orthodox theology comes from Platonism, because Christianity was really where the West was heading. Maybe not in its particular form, but it's where the West was kind of heading anyways. You had a lot of Roman emperors who were interested in monotheism. Philosophical monotheism was doing very well among the Greeks, etc. And Christianity fulfilled it, and it put a human face on it. And I think to some extent that's one of the reasons why Christianity is so successful in the West, because it takes these infinite ideas and it makes them coherent, it makes them comprehensible. It provides Jesus, it provides a human face to God, and it provides that link between man and the divine, that link that is so instrumental to the West. And indeed, that's what we've always sought in the West. The oldest stories are about man attempting to become God. We sought to transmute gold into lead into gold. We sought the philosopher's stone for immortality, for greatness. We seek to go to the stars. We seek to invent immortality so that we might live forever. And Christianity embodies all of that. The purpose of Christianity is that you will live forever, that higher goals are worth dying for, that good and evil exist, that there is a future that's worth striving for. But it's also an acknowledgement of all the harshness of reality. So I think what I'm trying to say here is Christianity is more or less the good version of the infinity will, and leftism is the bad version of the infinity will. Because even as Christianity posits that yes, we can progress economically, we can have technology, etc., it also posits that there's certain things that are eternally true, and that no one can change, and that no one can take away. That the married family will always be the best way of raising children. That men and women are different. That barbarism and tribalism and just masculine strength is a good thing, but masculine strength needs to be tempered and directed. It needs a moral framework. It needs honor. It needs, compassion. Not too much compassion, but it does need compassion, or else it just turns into a bunch of brutes raiding and pillaging. Knighthood is so quintessentially Western because it mixed that warrior ethos with Christian piety and compassion. And it created a way for men to be men, but in a restrained way that didn't threaten society and the social order. So it's to me, it's kind of the synthesis of all this different stuff in the West, and it's the essence of our character, and that's why we took so rapidly to it, and that's why we became Christian, and that's why Christianity flourished, because it is quintessentially Western, and it is the soul of the West. It is the soul of the West, much as the infinity will is, because the Christianity is the ultimate expression of the infinity will. And it provides us a way to look towards the future while avoiding many of the mistakes of the past. I mean, it gives us a framework. It acknowledges, yes, progress is possible to some extent, and we have to recognize that the idea of progressivism will always exist, because optimism towards the future and hope of improving it is part of the West. That's not to say everything has to change and everything shouldn't change, but you have to acknowledge that desire is there. And we can't ignore it, and we have to be true to ourselves. So Christianity acknowledges that, but it's very pragmatic. It's very geared towards social functionality in a lot of ways. So it says, okay, yes, these things can change, but these things are infallible. These things cannot change. I guess there's also like the ethnic racial issue. I don't really want to get into that. To that, I just say nationalism, racial and ethnic identity, and like cult and identitarianism, or whatever you want to call it, tribalism, existed with Christianity for hundreds of years. It's just a modern corruption of it that says that can't exist. If anything, if you read the Old Testament and read a lot of it, then you really get the impression God doesn't want different peoples to live together. He kind of wants us to go do our own thing in our own parts of the world. Maybe be Christian, maybe kind of like trade, etc., but not really live together. So that's kind of my response to Ald Watt. I know it's very long, but it's a in-depth topic. There's a lot of stuff to cover. I'm not really going into the truth claims of Christianity, because that's an entirely different topic. I could go on at much, and this video would be like hours long. I do think it's true. I do think the historical evidence holds up, but this was more just about Christianity's role as a Western religion. So this is Argent Templar. Thank you for listening. Signing out.